Today is June 9th. Could we all please rise and begin the meeting with the prayer? Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city to make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Can we all please salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
of the United States
republic
of America,
for which it stands,
Republic,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Counsel Belanger.
Here.
Mayor Elliott.
Here.
Counsel
Here.
Counsel Leahy.
Here.
Counsel Martin.
Here.
Counsel Mercia.
Here.
Counsel Milonazo.
Here.
Counsel Rourke.
Here.
Counsel Samaras.
Here.
9 present.
Chair would like to recognize Councilor Milonazo for a moment of silence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chambers for Esther Doherty, who passed away on May 25th. Esther is the mother-in-law of our colleague Bill Martin. She was born in Lowell, graduated from Lowell High School, although she spent most of her life in Westford, Massachusetts. But I felt it fitting to bring this moment of silence forward. She was the mother of 12 children, 4 boys and 8 girls, and our colleague married Martha Doherty, number 11, I believe, on to Esther Doherty, and she was a loving mother, grandmother, and she loved spending time with her close friends and family. So I offer a moment of silence for Esther Doherty.
Thank you, Councilor. Could we all please rise? Can we talk in the chambers? May she rest in peace. Before we get into the mayor's business, Chair would like to recognize City Councilor Rita Mercia. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce Jeanette Anderson, a BLA student enrolled at UMass Lowell in the community psychology class. One of her projects includes attending a community meeting, and she chose the city council meeting tonight. There she is right there. She will probably interview me after the meeting, but that's a psychology. She wants to know what's going to make me tick, but that's okay. We'll figure it out together. So thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here. Can we get a copy of that report after you interview Councilor Mercia?
Yeah.
So moving on to the next first item on the agenda, we have, under the mayor's business, we have a communication from Richard Howe regarding Lowell Walks, guided tours of downtown Lowell. Welcome to City Hall, Mr. Register of Deeds, and thank you for doing this, but also thank you for coming to let people at home know about Lowell Walks.
Well, thank you for the time, Mr. Mayor. For the record, my name is Richard Howe. I live at 130 Westview Road in Lowell, and I'm here to talk about Lowell Walks, which is a series of downtown walking tours that take place on Saturday mornings throughout this summer. They are all free. They are all starting at 10 a.m. on the morning on Saturdays from the National Park Visitor Center at 246 Market Street. They all last 90 minutes, and they all happen rain or shine. They're all different, though. Each one is a different topic and a different tour guide who is really a subject matter expert on the theme to be discussed. We've already had our first tour. It was this past Saturday. It was Preservation Success Stories. That was led by Fred Faust. And we had 81 people show up for it, including Councilor Belanger, I'd like to thank for attending. This coming Saturday, it's the Lowell Outside Public Art Collection, the sculptures that are scattered throughout downtown. That'll be led by Paul Mary and Rosemary Noon. June 20th is Inside Lowell High School, led by Headmaster Brian Martin. June 27th is Literary Lowell in the Pollard Library, led by Sean Thibodeau of the library staff. We take July 4th off and resume on July 11th with The Irish and the Acre by Dave McKeon, who's the archivist of St. Patrick's Parish. On July 18th, Jay Mason, the chair of the Lowell Green Building Commission, will lead a tour on environmentally friendly and green buildings in downtown. August 25th is the Folk Festival. We won't have a tour that day. August 1st, Professor Bob Ferrant of the History Department at UMass Lowell will lead a tour on the pre-Civil War abolitionists in Lowell. August 8th, your own Craig Thomas will lead a tour on the Hamilton Canal District. On August 15th, Jane Calvin of the Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust will take us to natural places in downtown. August 22nd, Jim Diamond of the Brush Gallery will talk about Lowell artists past and present. August 29th, I'll be the tour guide and we'll talk about the various monuments around City Hall. September 5th, Chris Hayes will talk about trains and trolleys in Lowell. And we'll close on September 12th with Dave Willett talking about renewing the acre. For more information, we've posted all of this on the National Park website. I'm in the process of submitting it to the city calendar, and it's also on my own website, richardhowe.com. One of the primary purposes of this is to bring people into downtown Lowell on Saturday mornings, and I think we expressed the ability to do that with the 81 that showed up on Saturday. We mentioned frequently that after walking for 90 minutes, they've probably worked up a good appetite and they should go eat at a restaurant and then go shopping in one of the stores in downtown Lowell. I think that it's just one more effort to try to bring people from the neighborhoods and the surrounding communities into the city. This is a grassroots, bottom-up, all-volunteer effort. However, UMass Lowell, the National Park, and the city have been very supportive of it. And I hope that it becomes a catalyst for others to do the same thing. I think there's an incredible variety of things in Lowell that could be subjects of tours, whether it be restaurants or churches or neighborhoods. And I think tours are the perfect way to share stories with people. And I think stories have a very powerful way of connecting people with place and with each other. And I think developing those bonds are very important in promoting the city. And finally, I think we all try so hard to make Lowell a better place that sometimes that effort makes us lose sight of all of the beautiful and great things in downtown Lowell. Since 1978, there's been more than $1 billion in private and public funds spent from the Lasher Park all the way down to the Lowell Auditorium. And I think around the country and around the world, Lowell is seen as a very beautiful place with much to see and much to be proud of. And I think by spending a Saturday morning walking around downtown with somebody sharing incredible stories is a great way to do that. So thank you very much for your time. I hope that each of you are able to make one of the tours during the summer.
Well, thank you, Mr. Howe. With the exception of 4th of July, every weekend is filled right until the end of the summer. That's great.
And also on the Folk Festival
Weekend, great.
Mayor.
Councilor Belanger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did attend the very first walk, if you will, throughout downtown Lowell, and it was very nice to see, to pull up at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday and see a very large group of people, well over 80 people in front of the Visitor Center on Market Street. I did not expect that. I was extremely thrilled. Then we, from there, under Dick Howe's leadership, we went from there. We toured the old firehouse on the corner of Middle and Palmer Street, and I want to thank Joe and Shayla McNamee for opening up their doors for a very large group that toured that restoration. A beautiful building there. Then we went to the Bon Marché on Merrimack Street and got the whole history there. But a special thank you to this core group of volunteers led by Dick Howe Jr. In his, quote, subject matter experts, and then it consists of Fred Faust, Chuck Parrott, Steve Stoll, Paul Marion, who take time out of their schedule and donate time to give these tourists a tour of the city, as long as tell them the rich history of these buildings in our city, and they were captivated by it. And then from there, you have almost 100 people around noon to disperse into the downtown shops, which was great to see. So thank you to Mr. Howe for his efforts in making downtown a destination. It's greatly appreciated, and I think I just wanted to give them the recognition they deserve, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Samaras?
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. Actually, for Attorney Howe, I think we should name him the ambassador to the city of Lowell. And truthfully, I think all of the speakers should be considered ambassadors for the city of Lowell. And something like this just helps to improve the quality of life. So I want to thank you, Attorney Howe, and everybody else concerned for helping develop this type of a program that certainly is needed and certainly worthwhile. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to these tours throughout the summer. We appreciate you, appreciate everything you do, Attorney. Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move on to, we have the minutes. We have minutes of the Transportation Subcommittee on May 19th. Excuse me. We also have minutes from the City Council meeting on May 26th. We have minutes from the Personnel Subcommittee. We also have minutes from the special meeting and the budget on June 2nd, all for acceptance. Motion to accept all the minutes and place on file by Council Samaras, seconded by Council Malinazzo. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The minutes are accepted and placed on file. Chair would like to recognize Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If there's no objection from my colleagues, I'd like to take council motion out of order. We have the Pawtucketville Neighborhood Group here this evening, and so I'd like to take item 10.7 out of order, Mr. Mayor, if it's okay with my colleagues.
Motion by Councilor Belanger to suspend the rules to take an item out of order.
Second.
Second by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. We will take item 10.7 out of order. I can just read it. This is a motion by Council Belanger. Request city manager have traffic engineer evaluate the intersection of Mammoth Road and West Meadow Road to address parking and safety issues. Second by Council Rohr. Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to my colleagues. You know, this intersection is well known up on Mammoth Road. It's a very busy intersection. And as of late, there was a very high-profile petition through the Zoning Board of Appeals to put a restaurant in there, and variety store. It was a very large-scale project for this intersection, and this neighborhood group really united here and got together. At the end of the day, the petitioner ended up withdrawing the petition without prejudice, but with that being said, you know, I was at the Pawtucketville Neighborhood Group attended by most of my colleagues a few weeks ago, and, you know, with all the exposure this intersection has had, it's got a history of accidents, and it just, again, has had a lot of exposure as of late, but I'd like to see something good come out of this petition and all this attention that this intersection has received with regarding safety, traffic improvements, and parking improvements. At this intersection. It's very dangerous. It's one of the worst in the city. This neighborhood is very concerned about it, and I think the road, at least, you know, for the traffic engineer to go up there, take a look, scope things out, and see what improvements can be made at that intersection. I don't pretend it's easy, but at the very least, let's go up there, let's take a look. There's got to be something we can do to improve the safety at this intersection. And I believe I'm hearing there's another an accident there this morning to add to the list. So with that being said, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to see for the manager to get the traffic engineer up there, take a look. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion on this motion? Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. I just want to say, I think it's timely, I think it's a good motion, and that it is a dangerous intersection. We have some bad accidents up there, so any type of potential development needs to really be looked at. It is a neighborhood. It's so to bring any type of big businesses in, you want to consult with the neighborhood, and again, you can't ignore that intersection, how dangerous it is. It needs to be taking a good, hard look at it and make some improvements with any further development there. So,
Thank you, Councilor. I agree. That is it's a busy and a dangerous intersection. So I support that. Can you look at Mammoth Road and VFW too, Mr. Manager? I'm just kidding. Ms. Forgione, did you want to speak? Motion to suspend the rules to allow Ms. Forgione from the Pawtuckaville Citizens
Deb
Council.
Forgione, Pawtuckaville
Motion by
Citizen
Council Mercy,
Council.
seconded by Council Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed motion carries.
Yeah, I guess to really thank you for the motion, I think he wrapped it up. I think he said it perfectly, exactly why the motion is needed, and also Council Leahy. I just appreciate the response to be able to look at that, knowing what came out of that zoning meeting and be paying attention to that area and revisiting it. At best, a pedestrian crosswalk would be a big help. And I really look forward to the city traffic engineer looking at it, because I've been paying attention to a lot of his recommendations, and he nails it every time. So I'm really looking forward to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Forgione. Further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, that motion carries. So there's been a request to take item 6.1 out of order. We have a number of individuals here from the Citizens Advisory Committee. So if there's no objection, motion to suspend the rules by Council Leahy, seconded by Council Kennedy, to take item 6.1 out of order. It's a vote to authorize the approval and submission of the 2015 through 2020 consolidated plan to HUD. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, that motion carries. First reading by title, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, City of Lowell, and City Council vote authorizing the approval and submission of the 5-year consolidated plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the City Council. When we talk about citizen participation, I think this is at the top of the list when you talk about the Citizens Advisory Committee that sits down and meets with all of the groups and entities across the City of Lowell who are looking for funding, listens to them, conducts the interviews, and then makes the difficult decision as to what entities will be funded under these community development block grant funds. Chris Samaras from our Department of Planning and Development heads this effort. Chris, would you do me a favor? Would you just describe briefly the process that is done by the committee, and then would you just introduce them so that we can thank them publicly for their input?
Sure. This process, it's basically a 6-month process from the RFP process to when the applicants come in, and they'll meet with the Citizen Advisory Committee, and then the Citizen Advisory Committee will take applications. And this year they reviewed close to 50 applications, and we meet on a number of times where we'll meet and talk about all the different applications on a scoring basis, and it's a very competitive process. And this committee does a fantastic job of really deciding how to allocate the CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Funds, and ESG funds, Emergency Solution Grant Funds. And right now, out of we have 8 members of this committee. 4 are here. I would like to introduce Anne Marie Page, Mary Lou White, Montrisha Williams, and Patricia Coffey.
Could you please come to the podium so people can see who you are?
Yeah.
Thank you. Great.
I would also like to mention there are 4 other members of this committee, Lada Lau, Adam Mitchell, Paulette Renault Caragianis, and also I'd like to pay respect for Kamal Jain, who was a member of this committee for multiple years, who passed away just this past month. So they did a great job, and I really appreciate all the work that they did.
Very good. Thank you so much. Would any of you like to speak? Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If the people at home could only see that this book is so done thick, and they perused every bit of it, conducted meetings through the city to see, and I know it's hard when you have to say no to some and cut some but I went through this myself.
I hope you didn't go through it with your
No,
axe again.
No, not with an axe, but I did go through and on page 173, when they talked about the Council on Aging and the leasing, thank you, dear Jesus, that we get to pay for that center again through the CDBG funding money. Thank you so much. Oh, you're not going to come back and cut it now. Oh, all right.
Any questions?
Oh, no, I don't have any questions. I'm just so grateful that it's in here and you're saving it, so thank you so much.
So
'Cause
I have
it
a
is lot
question
of-
on that. What year are we in the lease payment for that senior building, senior citizen center?
I don't have an exact answer,
Okay.
but I would say it's another maybe 10 years, maybe. I don't know if I can get an answer on that.
Okay, could we find, I thought that was a
Yeah, wait a
10-year plan, and we got to be
I
close.
don't have the
so-
exact.
Okay, thank you.
2003.
Further questions for Mr. Samaras on the
I think we're 12 years into it.
12 years into it? Okay,
Yeah.
great. How time flies. Further questions on this plan? I think we're all set. Seeing none, entertain a motion. We need the second reading, a motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Leahy, second by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion carries. Second reading, authorizing the approval and submission of the 5-year consolidated plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Move approval by Council Mercia, second by Council Milonazo. Further discussion on this? Seeing none, roll call.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Martin. Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
That's 8 yeas.
8 yeas. Motion carries. Thank you, Mrs. Samaras, and thank you, members of the Citizen Advisory Committee, for all your hard work and dedication over the last 6 months. We appreciate it. The least we could do is get you in so you don't have to sit through this entire meeting.
That's right.
So moving on, we have a number of general public hearings that have been advertised, but it's not 7 o'clock, so we'll proceed with other items on the agenda. We'll move into section 5.1. We have communications from the city manager. We have motion responses. We'll go through them alphabetically. Questions on motion response A, relocation of crosswalk at St. Anthony's. Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. When I read the report, and I took a drive by there today, I just wanted to make sure, really don't want to see any of those trees cut down. So I didn't know if anyone could answer a question about that, if the trees are really at risk, or what the deal would be with the trees.
Mr. Manager?
Yes, Mr. Bussin, would you address that issue, please?
Yes, Counselor. Diane Trad, Director of our department, went out there with us, and we looked at those trees and made sure that where we positioned the crosswalk, because a crosswalk, it's not just paint on the ground, you actually have to put the ramps for the wheelchair accessible. So that work will, we placed the crosswalk so it wouldn't impact the root system for those trees, and those trees would be saved.
Oh, it won't.
So that's
Okay, so it will not impact.
we're doing everything we can not to impact the trees.
Okay.
We're trying to save them. Yes,
Okay, all right, thank you.
sure.
All set. Councilor Mercia?
Yes, on that same subject, did you consult with Father Hughes, Charles Hughes from the parish?
The
pastor?
I did not personally, no, ma'am.
So who brought up, where did this motion originate from? Who's asking for this crosswalk to be there?
It originated with council.
Well, so,
Councilor Kennedy?
who's bringing the, I should think that the very priest that does the service there and knows the area and the parishioners, if it would have come from him, I could understand it, but we're taking down a
Mr. Manager?
handicap parking spot? Are we losing parking in front of the church for a handicap parking spot?
Yes,
Mr. Manager?
Yes. We've been in touch with a gentleman by the name of Steve Mendonça. Could you just explain what the conversations with Mr. Mendonça have
McGovern?
been?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I have been in contact with Mr. Mendonça from the church because as a result of the motion, and from my understanding, they've been looking for this crosswalk for a number of years, somewhere around 10 years, I believe. When Nicholas went up and looked at the situation, he believed that we could actually take care of the request finally on the right-hand side of the tree without much impact to the area. In terms of, and I actually just spoke with him probably about an hour and a half ago, and they're happy, they like this solution, and
And they don't mind losing a handicap parking spot in front of the church?
no, council, they're okay with that.
Council Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as by way of clarification, I'm the one that put the motion in. I put the motion in at the request of Mr. Mendonça, who is involved with the parish. And the motion passed unanimously. I'm not sure if you were here on that day, but I think that maybe you were. The reason for the motion, the reason they wanted the crosswalk changed is because where the crosswalk is now, nobody uses it. So it's dysfunctional. So they thought that it would be better if the crosswalk could be moved down near towards the parish hall, I guess, where kids would be using it, because nobody's using the crosswalk, so you don't need it. But it's a safety issue up there, so they do need a crosswalk, because there's kids that are crossing the street there. So that was the reason for the motion. Possibly the traffic engineer didn't speak to the priest, but Mr. Mendonça has been speaking to the pastor of St. Anthony's, and so that's where it all came about. And so I guess if they're willing to give up a handicap parking space, they're doing that because of the safety issue for the kids that are using the parish facilities.
Well, that's fine if that's what they want. I just didn't realize if they knew they were losing a handicap parking spot. But they know it, and they're fine with it. So if they're happy, then I'm happy.
Can I just add one thing?
Council
I
Leahy?
think, too, what it does, the new location of the crosswalk is something that, that parking spot is right in front of a driveway, too. So I think that always, for safety reasons, that always opens up, when people are coming back around the church, they don't have a car parked right there, too. So I know we lose that handicap spot, but I think overall, cars pulling out, people crossing, it's a much safer situation, so.
Okay, any further discussion on motion response A? Move on to motion response B, traffic lights at Broadway Street Bridge. Seeing none, moving on to motion.
Just one, I guess. I'm the one that put that motion on, so it looks like by the time they start the bridge, by the time we do a study, get the lights up, and the bridge will be under construction within 4 months, so, okay. But as long as, the suggestion came from a few people around there, but as long as we keep up the traffic details with police watching it.
Mr. Manager?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, I almost got clipped the other night again, so I've told the police to make sure they pay due attention. I think the other thing interesting, I thought about it afterwards, if you did that, we might have traffic blocking up to Walker Street, backing up to Walker Street and blocking that off and down to School Street. So based on the time frame and the amount of money that we would have to pay, it probably just makes sense to keep the police details there, like you said.
Sure. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Council. Further discussion on motion response B? Motion response C, Centerville Pump Station. Questions, Council Samaras?
Thank you. I attended a Lower Pawtuckaville meeting in which a number of people were concerned about their rates going up, their flood insurance rates going up. People talking $1,000, $1,100 this year alone. And I know we have the engineer here, Mr. Stewart. Could he just give a quick overview as to like a timeline that they're looking at?
Mr. Stewart?
Thank you, Councilor Samaras. My name is Mike Stewart. I'm the engineering manager at the wastewater utility. And the utility has been charged with upgrading the flood pumping station in Centerville. It's part of a flood protection system that was built by the U.S. Corps of Engineers in 1941 as a response to the floods in the 30s that devastated the city. That pump station, which is in the median of the VFW highway next to West Street, is non-operational. It hasn't functioned for over 40 years. It has been cited by the Army Corps as a deficiency, and because of that, the flood protection system has been decertified. And all those properties that are behind that flood protection system have been placed in the floodplain by FEMA, and they are therefore compelled by their mortgage holders to obtain flood insurance, which, as you said, Counselor, is rather expensive. This is a legacy that has been with us for a long time, and the intent is to replace that pumping capacity and do it forthwith. So the plan is essentially this. We are in the midst of an alternatives analysis right now. By the end of this year, we will have selected an alternative to replace that pumping capacity. In 2016, the design of a new pump station will be completed. In 2017, that pump station will be constructed, and by 2018, the intention is to recertify that pump system, that flood protection system, so that those people are relieved of that financial burden.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mike.
Those are some of the answers that we need, but the people of Pawtuckaville really need those answers, and I know Councilor Rourke has your motion, I believe, to deal with this. Do you think you could set up a meeting or a workshop for the people of Pawtuckaville to really hear this type of information and listen to, we'll say, the history of some of the problems, why FEMA did what they did because of Katrina, and where the city's at this particular time? I think they really would like to have that information, perhaps by September at least.
Mr. Manager, I think we could include Centerville too, because they're
Yes.
affected by it a great deal. I know we
Right.
received some
Thank you.
emails. Mr. Manager?
Absolutely, we'll set up a neighborhood meeting. I know of a perfect spot to have it, and we'll invite all of the affected people to come down and listen to the wonderful explanation that Mr. Stewart gave this evening.
I think that will help. Thank you very much.
Motion by Council Samara, second by Council O'Rourke to have the manager set up a meeting with neighborhood organizations, Centerville, Pawtuckaville, East Pawtuckaville, to provide an explanation on the Centerville pump station and the impact on flood insurance. All those in favor signify by saying, Council Kennedy?
Yeah, I just have one question, I think. You said that would all be rectified by 2018,
That is the plan.
but then for the flood insurance to be taken away, for the requirement to be taken away, doesn't the flood map have to be changed?
Yes, it will be, we'll be collaborating with both the U.S. Corps of Engineers and FEMA. So the first step will be to build the pump station. The second will be to get it recertified by the Army Corps. And the last step will be to have FEMA remove those properties from the floodplain.
So do you anticipate that could happen in 2018 as well?
I do. Our intention, and we're already doing this, is we've been meeting periodically with the Army Corps and FEMA. And what we'll do is once we select an alternative in this fall, we'll bring that alternative to them and continue to communicate with them so that we can expedite this recertification.
Okay, thank you.
Council Martin?
Thank you. I appreciate the effort that's gone into this. And it's unfortunate that, I guess, FEMA has chosen to classify this as a flood zone. I mean, I understand the pump station hasn't worked in some time, but there hasn't really been serious flooding there in a long time either. I know we had some in 2006, but certainly nothing like we had in the 30s. You know, if 3 years is what it takes, then I guess that's what it takes. But, you know, if I'm a resident in Centerville and my flood insurance bill just got delivered, I'm going to think I have to pay this for another 3 years. And that's a burden in that neighborhood. So I appreciate the work, Mr. Stewart and the people at the plant. But this really needs to be prioritized. I know the council has voted funding for a number of the CSO issues, and this is one. And so I'm pleased with the motion response that this is underway, but this really does need to be a priority so people can have some relief from these insurance premiums as soon as is possible. So appreciate the efforts, but I think you need to keep your foot on the gas on this project, and please keep the council posted if this schedule gets delayed, but maybe also might be improved in some way.
Further questions from Mr. Stewart? Council Leahy?
Thank you. Councilor Martin brings up a good point. If there's any way that we can get the recertification done as plans are moving ahead, I know you mentioned that, but maybe there's a loophole or something that we can take advantage of, that once the program starts, we can apply earlier, you know, maybe a year earlier, once the plans are drawn. I don't know if they need to have a shovel in the ground, but, you know, anything we can do to alleviate this, you know, I was doing the numbers too, and for another 3 years, it is a burden, so anything you can do on that.
Yes.
Further questions on this motion response? Seeing none, we'll move on to, actually, motion was made and seconded, and all those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion carries. Just have the manager set up meeting with the neighborhood organizations affected by it. Moving on to motion response D, update on fire damaged buildings, fire damaged buildings. Questions on motion response D? Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the department for this. It's a good report. It's very thorough. It goes neighborhood by neighborhood, gives us the progress of each particular building, where it is, where it stands. So, you know, again, this is something that neighbors don't need to look at. Anything that we can do to push the process along, to clean up and help out people who are victims, and just to clean up the neighborhoods and get these projects going. So it's a very thorough report. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Moving on to any further questions on motion response D? Moving on to motion response E, informational citizen advisory committee invitation. For the questions, entertain a motion to accept the responses and place on file by Councilor Samaras, second by Councilor Rourke. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion passes. Seeing as it's after 7 o'clock, we will move to the general public hearings and utility public hearings that have been advertised. First one is an ordinance to create a new department entitled Health and Human Services. Okay, we will now open up this portion of the public hearing for anyone wishing to speak in favor. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Seeing none, we will close that portion of the public hearing. We will now open up this portion of the public hearing for anyone who is wishing to speak in opposition. Is there anyone in opposition that wants to speak? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, we will close that portion of the public hearing. What is the wish of the body? Councilor Mercia?
As I understand this, this is no new added money, right, Mr. Manager?
Mr. Manager?
Yes, correct. No new added money.
Changing a title, are we?
Well, what we're doing is we're changing the title, and since this person will be coming in at the first step on the grade, rather than the health director who's at the top step, we'll be saving money there. And by the additional money that we're going to pay for a deputy,
Right.
that it'll be neutral as far as cost.
Okay, move approval.
Motion to approve by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Martin. Discussion? Councilor Milonazo and
Thank
then
you.
Councilor Samaras.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for the record, I'd just like to publicly state that I have a sister that works in the health department as the nurse manager, and I don't benefit from her employment in the health department. But I did have a question. I understand the logic behind the reorganization. As I recall, Mr. Manager, you had indicated that you had a number of the department heads, if you will, report to you directly, and by putting these two positions in with an office manager, you'll take some of that direct reporting away from you. Was there any thought to having the department heads that are mentioned in this ordinance report to Mr. McGovern as your assistant city manager, as opposed to creating this new department? Was there any thought given to that?
Mr. Manager?
No, we really didn't, because what we were thinking about is that these departments just have the ability to collaborate. Just think about the recreation department collaborating with the library and the health department to have, during their summer and winter programs, have the health department in there to teach the children about the dangers of drugs, about healthy lifestyles to avoid obesity. Think about the recreation working with the library to have getting the books out to those programs to teach the kids how to read. I don't want to put down Mr. McGovern, but I think that a person.
Neither do I.
No, I know. I'm not saying, but I'm saying I don't think he's best suited to do that. I think that this ability to have somebody who knows health and is able to coordinate those health activities with the Council on Aging, with the children, with the library, and that, I just think it's a great opportunity for this collaboration, because the department heads there right now are terrific. They do a great job, and they'll continue to do a great job. But we're just envisioning them doing even more together to make a better lifestyle for the residents of Lowell.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council. Councilor Samaras?
Actually, that was basically my question for the city manager. I look at a number of different departments, and I wanted to understand the relationship that the department would have with the new head of that particular department. And I understand that's a reasonable explanation, because education is very important if we're going to take care of the opioid issue and other issues, health issues like that. So thank you very much.
Council, Mr. Manager?
As you know, right now, that the Council on Aging and the library have a very good partnership with a satellite office. Imagine if we can expand that to all parts of the city. I know when I was a kid, we had the bookmobile, and it was a great thing. Maybe we can get things like that back out into the parks during the summer and that. And I think it's a great opportunity to collaborate among the departments.
All set, Council. Councilor Belanger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager, is that, Mr. Manager, myself and another colleague were approached by workers within the health nurses department within the city school system. And number one, they spoke extremely highly of outgoing Commissioner Singleton. And their concern was that this new individual, this new director, if you will have a public health background to address health crises such as Ebola that, was a scare as of late. That's one of their concerns, so I'd like to bring that to your attention, and can we give them reassurance that this individual will be qualified to handle that?
Mr. Manager?
Thank you. Excellent question, Councilor. And I was having that conversation today when we were talking about the job description to make sure that this person is certified as a public health administrator or something similar to that. But definitely this person will have a background in public health.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Further questions on this ordinance? Seeing none, motion has been made and seconded. Roll call.
Council Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
9 yeas.
9 yeas, motion passes, ordinance is adopted. Moving on to the next advertised public hearing. This is the second reading. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, City of Lowell, and City Council's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances for the City of Lowell by creating a position in the Department of Public Works, the Deputy Director of Administration and Finance for Public Works. We'll now open up this portion of the public hearing for anyone wishing to speak in favor? In favor, is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this ordinance? In favor. Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. We will now open up this portion of the public hearing for anyone wishes to speak in opposition. Anyone opposed? In opposition. Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed as well. Discussion? Move to approve. Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Belanger. Discussion, Councilor Milonazo?
And thank you. I just have a quick question. For those of us that have been around for a long time, like City Manager Murphy and City Councilor Kennedy, what happened to Roland Michaud's position when he was Deputy Director? Because I think this is what Roland Michaud used to do years ago.
Mr. Manager?
You're 100% correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So it just went off the grid at some point.
I think there's been times in the past that it was in the budget, but it wasn't filled.
Okay.
But no, you're 100% correct. This is Roland revisited.
Right, great. Thank you.
So, Mr. Manager, could you just go through the intent of this purpose and why this reorganization? I know there were some financial issues during this winter, and I know you gave a brief explanation when we sent this to a public hearing, but I just think for the people at home, the purpose of this restructuring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. What we found out during the winter is that the Public Works employees are terrific at removing snow, taking care of parks, doing all of those things, but quite honestly, there's some financial oversight that's lacking in the Department of Public Works. We saw that with the overtime issue, payroll issues during the snow removal operations. We've seen it with our net school spending requirements with the school department, is that they're not logging the work that's being done at the school department. And we have a number of capital projects coming up in the near future that is going to need financial oversight. So we feel that we need somebody there that has a financial background that's going to be able to oversee all of these things. And quite honestly, with the net increase in the logging of work for net school spending, the payroll oversight, especially as it relates to overtime, we think we're going to save money over time by creating this position.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager. Further questions? Motion's been made and seconded. Roll, Councilor Leahy?
Thank you, I just had a comment. So how many people will be actually over there in that department? Do they have 2 clerks now that do this?
Mr. Manager?
Yes, they have, I think the term is accountant is the position, and another is a office manager, and 2 head clerks. But quite honestly, we need somebody with a little more advanced financial knowledge to oversee, grant programs, oversee construction projects. Just a basic understanding of the collective bargaining agreement in the department is necessary. So
what's the history of this though? Like how would it have normally have been done? Through the commissioner and then with the assistant of the clerks?
Yes.
Okay, so now where does that put the commissioner?
Well, the commissioner's still in charge. This would be the
Yeah.
commissioner, and then the deputy commissioner in charge of administration and finance. So this would allow the commissioner, who does a great job clearing snow, fixing parks, to concentrate on that, and then have this deputy commissioner concentrating on the financial aspects of the department. It's a very large department, and I really think it needs something like a deputy commissioner for administration and finance.
All right. And
We just
then-
had too many, we had too many issues this winter
Yeah.
with finances, and we realized that it was necessary to do.
All right. So the salary will be established afterwards for this? Or do we have a salary yet?
We have the money has been put in the budget.
Yeah.
What we anticipate is, because it's also going to be overseeing finance for the parking, for the water enterprise and the wastewater enterprise, they will be contributing to the salary. So from the Public Works budget, I think it's going to be $58,000, so we're going to be able to save money in their budget by having the water and the wastewater pay for part of the position also.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Further questions? Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager. We have a clerk of the works. Do we have a clerk of the works? We don't have a clerk
No.
of the works in the city.
Typically, a clerk is hired by project.
But we used to have a clerk of the works.
Yes.
But we don't have one now.
Right.
That's
If there's a
what I wanted
major
to-
capital project, that project will absorb and hire a clerk of the works. Is that correct, Mr. Baldwin?
Right, thank you.
Roll call.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Still under general public hearings, there's another public hearing that's been advertised. This is for an ordinance amendment to Chapter 243 entitled Streets and Sidewalks by creating new sections entitled Section 243-23-1, News Racks. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, City of Lowell, and City Council's an ordinance, amending Code of Ordinances in the City of Lowell, Massachusetts with respect to Chapter 243 entitled Sidewalks, Streets and Sidewalks by adding news racks. Now entertain this, now open up this portion of the public hearing for anyone wishing to speak in favor. Anyone in favor? Anyone in favor? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. We will now open up this portion of the public hearing for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition? In opposition, seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed as well. What is the wish of the body? Council Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did talk to the city solicitor in regards to this particular ordinance because there is no oversight on the amount or the location or any overview or, enforcement or anything with news racks that can pop up all over the place with any type of literature and anywhere they want it. So this is a matter of trying to oversee where these things are located. And when you mention a license or a fee, people, it wouldn't be so steep that it would burden people that are in like the newspaper industry or whatever.
Mr. Manager?
Absolutely not, because we certainly don't want to be, infringe on freedom of speech. So I'm going to be setting the fee, and any fee will be minimal or not at all. The real reason for this is to make sure that they have liability insurance. If one of the boxes falls over and hurts somebody, we want to make sure that there is insurance available, just like we have that for the overhead signs.
Like indemnification.
And indemnification, because we lost a few this winter during the plowing, so we want to make sure that, we're not sued for the cost of the boxes.
As well as we have ADA standards, and we wouldn't want them to infringe on the free walking of pedestrians, right?
Excellent point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council. Further questions on this ordinance amendment? Seeing none, move to approve by Council Belanger, seconded by Council Kennedy. Roll call.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
9 yeas.
9 yeas, ordinance passes. Moving on, still under public hearings, we have a utility public hearing. This is a public hearing by National Grid and Verizon New England requesting to relocate one pole across from Dane Street. We'll now open up this portion of the public hearing for anyone wishing to speak in favor. You've been very patient, thank you.
Michelle Stacy, I'm a representative for National Grid. We're asking to move the pole on Dane Street across the street due to the parking lot that they're building for UMass Lowell. So that's the reason why we need to move it.
Okay. Questions? Mr. Manager?
We have received a communication from Adam Backey at UMass Lowell that they're in favor of this. This is going to, and Mr. Stewart, I talked to him at our council prep meeting is that we're fully in support of this because this is in concert with our combined sewer overflow project, which is going to assist that in this area. So both UMass Lowell and the city is fully supportive of this pole location also.
Okay. Any other questions? Nope, seeing none. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor? In favor, seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this relocation of a pole? In opposition? In opposition? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed as well. Motion to refer this to the wire inspector and for report and recommendation by Councilor Leahy, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. That motion carries. That concludes the public hearing portion of the agenda this evening. Now revert back to the regularly scheduled agenda. We are on 5.2. We have a communication from the city manager to appoint Kevin P. Dillon to the Conservation Commission. Dear Mayor Elliott and members of the City Council, pursuant to the authority vested in me as City Manager under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8C, it is with pleasure that I am appointing Kevin P. Dillon of 34 Hamden Street, Lowell, Mass. 01851, to the Conservation Commission to fill the unexpired term of Matthew Gordon, which term expires June 30th, 2016, or such time thereafter until a successor is appointed and qualified. Since under the above referenced statute, confirmation by the City Council is not required for this appointment, this letter is notification of such. I'd be happy to answer any inquiry you may have concerning this appointment. I have attached his resume for your review. Motion.
Accept the communication, please.
Motion to accept the communication placed on file by Council Milonazo, second by Council Rourke. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion passes. Moving on to the next communication, we have a communication from the city manager. Request out-of-state travel for one individual from the health department and one individual from the Department of Public Works. First one is, this is to send a public health nurse to a one-day conference. There are no expenses to the city. Second one is a request for Gunther Wellenstein and Sovanari Duke to attend the 34th Annual Northeast Recycling Expo in Manchester, New Hampshire. They'll be using a city vehicle, and they will not be staying overnight between the 2 days, so no cost to the city. Further questions on this? Motion to approve by Councilor Samara, second by Councilor Belanger. Roll call.
Council Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
9 yeas.
9 yeas, motion carries. Moving on to votes from the city manager, we already took up 6.1, which was a vote authorizing the consolidated plan. Moving on to 6.2. This is a vote to accept a gift of $500 from TD Bank NA for animal control per fetch pet fest. Authorizing a motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Mercia, who is chuckling. Second by Council Milonazo. Mr. Manager, can you just explain what this is? It's a donation. It's nice. What is Lowell's per fetch pet fest?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Tongue twister.
Basically, we just recently had it. It's an opportunity for you to bring your pet down to City Hall to have it registered and licensed, and also to get the necessary shots for your pet. So this is going to offset some of the costs of that, and it's a very well-attended event and good for the citizens of Lowell.
Okay, thank you very much. Roll call. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought motion by Council Mercia, second by Council Milonazo. Roll call.
Council Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
I want to say meow, but I'll say yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
That's 9.
9 yeas, motion passes. The gift is accepted. Next item is another vote from the city manager. Is a vote to authorize the filing of special legislation relative to the appointment of non-civil service fire chief in the city of Lowell as a first reading. Second reading, motion to waive the full reading by Council Martin, second by Council Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries. Second reading by title is Commonwealth of Massachusetts, City of Lowell. In City Council is a vote authorizing the filing of special legislation relative to the appointment of non-civil service fire chief in the City of Lowell. We have, Mr. Clerk, we have someone registered to speak.
Robert Page.
Good evening. My name is Lieutenant Robert Page, Lowell Fire Department, retired. I reside at 26 Fremont Street in Lowell, Massachusetts. Mayor Elliott, members of the council, City Manager Murphy. I rise to speak in opposition this evening. I believe that doing this, taking it out of civil service, would crush the initiative of our officers on our department. They work hard to earn their promotions and earn their grades. It takes a lot of work. We don't just push water. There's a lot of work involved in professional firefighting. Councilor Leahy said last week, there's a special bond among firefighters. There has to be, because we put our lives in each other's hands. When we're in trouble, and that's quite often, we expect our brothers and our sisters to get us out of there. The system is flawed. I commend you, City Manager. I agree with you. The system is flawed. But like so many things today, when things are broken, cell phones, TVs, marriages, we just throw them away. We don't try to fix them. I would suggest that doing this is too severe. It's like throwing the baby out with the wash water. I would suggest we fix it, if possible. I would suggest, I humbly suggest, a home rule petition that would require at least 3 deputy chiefs to take and pass the examination for chief. If they do not, I would ask that the test be null and void. I would then retest, and I would open it up to the captains on the fire department. And I can assure you 100%, no captain will take that exam. I thank you very much for your time and your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Anyone else, Mr. Clerk?
No, that's it.
No. That concludes registered speakers. What is the wish of the body? Council Leahy,
Thank you.
and then Council Martin.
Sure. I joined the subcommittee meeting a little bit late last week, but it's my understanding that there were 3 options that were offered, compromises, that kind of is a solution to what everybody's looking for. It gives the manager some more control, more oversight, and it does improve and keep the test or the selection in civil service. So I think, at the subcommittee meeting, we all got to speak on this, but I would urge tonight that we take a look at this and reconsider it. I understand, the manager's point of view. I understand what he's trying to do. But again, to pull this out and take the protection away from the fire chief, to, I guess in a way, break that bond that the fire department has and the morale, it just isn't the right thing to do. So I would urge tonight that we reconsider our votes and really think about this before we make a judgment on this and to vote this. I know that, I don't know, I wish that some people were here from the fire department to speak on this. I know that they're very disciplined, and they do things their own way. But I just want to urge my colleagues that their silence here tonight does not mean that they would like this to pass. So the chairman made some good points last week at the subcommittee meeting. I think we all made good points, but I think it's a big mistake if we pull this out of civil service. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Council Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one question for the manager. So if this passes and the position is no longer in civil service, somebody becomes chief and then they, I don't know, they fall out of disfavor, you're not happy with performance, would they go back, to their deputy status? Have you thought what would happen in that scenario?
Mr. Manager?
Well, first of all, I would give them a contract, and obviously the contract would give them protections, but no, if they were no longer under contract, they wouldn't go back to the deputy position.
Okay. But I mean, I suppose a contract could provide for that, though, right?
I can give, my understanding under the law is I can give up to a 5-year contract, and, we'd look into making that as part of the contract.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilman Milanazo?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager. I spoke last week at the Public Safety Subcommittee and indicated that I would not support the special legislation, and that's my position here this evening. I do think, as Councilor Leahy mentioned, that there are other options that we could consider. I know that Councilor Rourke had a number of them available for discussion last week, by having an assessment center, by keeping it in civil service and giving the manager some more control. I agree with Councilor Leahy that there is a special bond over there in the fire department. I think it really should remain in civil service. And I also just want to comment on some of the comments, I'll even go so far as to say the rhetoric that I've been hearing over the last week about some of this is before us tonight because of, I guess some people felt they were blaming the former chief regarding the overtime issue, and that by taking this out of civil service, the manager does have more control. Again, just for the record, I don't think that's the case. I don't think the city manager feels that way. I think that Chief Pitta did a very good job during his tenure as fire chief here. And I just, for the record, want to say that I don't think anybody here, if this does pass tonight, is doing this because of any impact that Chief Pitta had. If anything, like I said, I thought he did a very good job in a position of fire chief here. So, but again, I think we have other options open to us, and I would hope that my colleagues would defeat this vote and send it back to the city manager or the Public Safety Subcommittee for further discussion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council. Council Belanger? Oh, I'm sorry. I had Council Mercy and then Council Belanger. Sorry, Council Mercy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Taking the fire chief's position out of civil service would now make the person answerable to the city, in my opinion, not protected by the shield of civil service because a test was taken and a high mark was given. And I also did look upon the overtime account as a factor to me personally. I thought that the manager met with both chiefs in the fire department and the police department, and I maybe I misunderstood, but it seemed like the police chief lowered his overtime and the fire chief did not. That weighed a little bit to me. And there is a bond in the police department that I see as well. There's a bond there. They have to have each other to depend on their backs, on their lives out in the field as well. So there's a bond with the police department, and yet that was taken out of civil service. I don't know why there's a bond that exists in the fire department but not in the police department. I think there's a bond in both departments. Although I do want to echo what one of my colleagues said, I remember when civil service was taken out of the police department and Ken LaValle was made the chief with the stipulation that if the manager didn't want him there anymore, he would revert back to the previous position that he held. I think that's commendable. I think that if we chose a fire chief and he was a deputy fire chief and you weren't really that enthused with him, and I think he should have the right to go back to where he was, which would be deputy chief. I think, to me, that's only fair. There are many qualified people that are no good at taking tests, but would be great leaders, common sense individuals, compassionate, understanding, and yet know how to handle situations in a professional way. I personally feel that if this council had to take a test, I don't think I would be sitting here. Does that mean that I'm not compassionate, that I wouldn't be hardworking, that I wouldn't do my job, that I wouldn't take this job seriously? I would not probably pass the test. Are there qualities indicative in a test, or has the test taker got a mind for memorizing answers but does not display any leadership qualities? I don't know that from someone that took a test. I'm not referring to the present interim fire chief. It seems he is the one the union wants, and the manager said, I heard him say, he's monitoring his interim qualities to see if it fits the city's needs. I'm hearing that the interim chief is doing a very good job so far. Who knows, maybe in the end, everyone gets what they want. I am supporting the city manager's request. I will vote to take the fire chief's position out of civil service. And I do find this a vote very, very difficult. It's not an easy answer. I would like to please the fire department and say that I support their wishes. I would like to do the right thing. The only thing that bothers me in this is that when the city manager is no longer here and down the road we have another city manager, I would be upset if people work their way up to the rank and then the city manager decided to send someone from Medford to be our fire chief. That would be the only thing that would trouble me, and I would be troubled by that, because I firmly believe that those that work their way all the way up to the second best should have a shot at the title. That's my personal opinion, but I do feel that it belongs in the hands, oversight with the manager. That's my feeling, so I would support what the manager says. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Mercier. Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And then Council O'Rourke, then Council Smarrison.
Okay. This has been quite a dialogue with this council. And we've had some outstanding points made, not only tonight, but past hearings, the subcommittee meeting we held 2 weeks ago, and from the public input alone, from people within the department and residents of the city who were concerned, who emailed the council, and I thank them for their passion and involvement at the same time. But, let's go back to where this, Manager Murphy's only been on the job a little over a year. He is, faced with the retirement of Chief Pitt, who did an outstanding job. And again, the manager's going through this process for the first time and has come to the conclusion that it's a bit tainted, the way the process has been going on for amount of years. And to add to that, the way these men and women in the fire department, how noble they've been to each other, I agree that there is a brotherhood here, and they've been very respectful and commendable to one another to appoint the chief or to all support one individual, and I commend all of them for that. But the manager's brought this to our attention. He feels this process is tainted, and I happen to agree with him. Taking the fire chief out of civil service does not obstruct a man or a woman moving up throughout the ranks within the department all the way to deputy chief. This does not obstruct that. I know I received a few calls and a few emails regarding they are concerned that people won't be allowed to move up the ranks and become chief. That is most certainly not true. They can be promoted all the way to deputy chief. But my concern and my issue is that the manager should decide who the top official is in the department. There should be a vetting process involved because there's other things such as budgeting, overtime that come into play. And a test score is great. Whether you get a 99 or 100, that's fantastic. But it should be a factor, but not the deciding factor, in my opinion. So, you know, and in the end here, that this is not, as Councilor Milonazo alluded to, this is not a vote that this council is going to vote hastily to punish a chief here because of an overtime issue. That is not a factor whatsoever. I am looking at this entirely the way this process has gone through, and that's how I am viewing this, not from an overtime issue perspective. This issue is about 2 months old. We've put it off for additional information. We all have the additional information in our hand for a number of weeks now. I don't know what else we could be waiting for. I am ready to vote tonight. I have the same stance that I had 2 months ago. I just think the manager, in the end, should decide who the fire chief is. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rourke, then Councilor Samaras.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, thinking of the options that were talked about at the subcommittee meeting and even tonight, you know, there are 2 or 3 of the options that I think even councils that are in favor of taking out of civil service have mentioned tonight. You know, the tests could be just one of them. You know, there are things like job performance, education, experience, backgrounds that all go into an account, and it also gives the manager the option of picking more than one candidate that's given to him. You know, I think with regards to the overtime issue that was also mentioned, I think this year was a particular year where we had a terrible winter where, you know, by contract, you got to put extra firefighters on when a state of emergency is mentioned. And also, you know, a decision was made in 2013 where the city would only close 1 firehouse per shift. And, you know, the city doesn't have enough firefighters to fully staff the city per shift. So the only way to do that is to, you know, go through overtime. And I think those are the 2 main factors that vastly account for the overtime. And, you know, we've cut back on an extra house per shift. Now we're at 2. And the decision was made to extend that out to Labor Day to make it count. So, you know, I think that there are other options available that could, you know, a test is there, and you want to know who's most qualified to lead the fire department, and the test could be one small part of that. And, you know, I would echo Councilor Leahy and Councilor Monazo's remarks of, you know, taking a look at it to see what can be done, you know, to include all avenues to pick the next fire chief. If by some reason it does come out, you know, agreeing with Councilor Mercier and Councilor Martin that, you know, I think there's going to be some protection for somebody that in case the fire chief, they're not there anymore, that they do have some protection to fall back. Because I don't know how you're going to get somebody 49, 50, 51 years old to take the position, knowing that they could be let go at a moment's notice with no protection. So I think it's another thing that has to be looked at as well. And, you know, as of the vote right now, I would vote to keep it in civil service. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council. Council Milonazo, did you want to speak? Oh, I'm sorry, Council Samaras and then Council Milonazo.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. It's times like this when you realize the difficulty of being a city councilor and making a very hard choice. When you talk about the men in the fire department, and men and women in the fire department, a very fine group of people. And I know I've not been pressured in any way on my vote. I mean, it talks about their professionalism. I also believe in the system, civil service system. I mean, because it helps the rank and file and people, you know, the people that are coming in to be a firefighter are well-trained and have a good knowledge level. But at the same time, in running for city council, one of my stands was that I believe that this council should act as a board of directors to the city manager. Meaning that if you're going to have the city manager do his or her job, you've got to give them the tools to do the job. If they don't do the job, giving them that type of support, then you know where the problem lies. It lies with the city manager, not other people. So with that said, I really feel when you talk about one of the biggest departments and most important department, one of the most important departments in the city, I think the city manager should have the right to select his person. At the same time, knowing the quality of the present deputy fire chief and, many of the people who've been there, who are there now and have been there before, I believe we should offer them the protection of being able to go back to their original position if the city manager thought otherwise. I also mentioned at the last meeting that as a former headmaster of Lowell High School, at one time I was on tenure. Tenure was much like civil service, and the state changed to have us a direct report to the superintendent and to be under contract. And what that really meant, as far as I was concerned, is that I had to build a closer bond with the superintendent, and we had to work together rather than we'll say, a separate fashion. And I'm not saying that that exists, but that's what happens when there's a direct report. And I think if we want the city manager to do what's expected of him, we've got to give him the tools that he requests. And I will support his request. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Councilman Milanazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up on a couple of points my colleagues have made as it relates to the overtime issue. Clearly, the fire chief, as well as the police chief, was approached by the city manager to try to get overtime under control. As it relates to the fire department, it was my understanding, sitting on this council and attending public safety subcommittees, that they were closing one firehouse per shift, as Councilor Rourke indicated, and the chief indicated to us that in order to slow down the overtime, they would have to close two firehouses per shift. And coming off the Branch Street fire, during a terrible winter, I think the message to the chief, although I certainly didn't give it to him, the message to the chief was there was only going to be one firehouse closed per shift. So that's why the issue of the overtime became such a problem. So again, I think, in fairness, it came down for me, it was a public safety issue, only wanting one firehouse, actually not wanting any, but one firehouse closed per shift, but we had to offset that with the overtime cost. We're now, as Councilor Rourke indicated, we have two closed per shift now through Labor Day. But again, it's unfair to compare the police department with the fire department, in my opinion, only because it's just so different relative to the number of houses closed per shift. So again, I understand the overtime was an issue, but at the end of the day, I can understand why the manager's bringing this forward, but at the same time, I just can't in good conscience support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To me, this issue has two components, I think. When it was first brought to our attention, it was because the process was tainted. Those are not my words. I think that might be the city manager's words. And so because of that, and I guess it was just one person that took the exam and passed the exam, and so it was almost a situation where the fire department, rather than the city manager, was selecting who the fire chief would be. And so when I learned about that, what I did was I called the Civil Service Commission and found out that there were other options besides the option that was using. And some of those options, I think, are viable options and that would probably cure that first component. Whether that is, I think if we were to have those, if we were to select a different option than the one that was used most recently, that the selection process would be a lot more comprehensive and wouldn't be tainted at all. And so for me, if that was the only issue, I would be voting for one of those options and to keep the position in civil service. But the second component is one that I find to be most compelling, and that is the accountability issue that the city manager brought up. And I think it's important that that every department head be accountable to the city manager. And so if that's not going on, I think that we have an obligation to vote in such a way as to make that go on. But I guess I have one question regarding that, and that would be over the idea of a contract. You know, Mr. Manager, I've said before on this council that I'm really not in favor of contracts. But I would like for you to explain why, if a fire chief has a contract, why he is more accountable than a fire chief that has civil service protection. In other words, what's the difference in your mind between civil service protection and contractual protection?
Mr. Manager.
Basically, in a contractual position is that the standards relative to performance are less than the civil service protections. In other words, I would be able to discipline the person for a lesser reason than the civil service allows right now. So they'd have to be more answerable and more accountable to me.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
I'll say, Council. Council Lay, could you take the chair for a second? For a minute, please.
Mayor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I feel compelled to speak on this as well because it is an important issue. And I'm going to support the manager, but I kind of just want to follow up on Councilor Kennedy, Mr. Manager. I don't support the notion of contracts either, for a number of reasons, but I also look at all of the other department heads that, including yourself, and two of them that are here today that don't have contracts, as well as a new superintendent. But I firmly believe that we need to put a new system in place that invokes competition and that essentially removes this notion of a guaranteed job for life until retirement. I also like to say it's an honorable profession, and I know I speak for everyone here. We appreciate the work that each and every firefighter does for the city of Lowell. When called, lives are put online in a moment's notice. There's no questions asked, and it takes a special person to do that. They clearly don't do it for the money. They do it for the love of the job and the honor of the profession. And I think that carries along with the individual that stays in the profession for years and works his way up the ladder into senior positions. And, these same people, I think we have to remove the notion that, these individuals that do stay in the city, that do stay in the system, they're all going to be eligible. And I think that the city has a good record of hiring those individuals. I think there's a lot to be said by an individual who has spent their entire career in the city, that knows the neighborhoods, that knows the streets, that knows the alleyways. I think that goes a long way and will be taken into consideration. So like everyone else, we all go to work every day, and there's no guarantee. We have to work to earn our job and to prove ourselves, and I think this should be no different. So that's why I think that we need to move forward. I think it's, civil service is an antiquated system. It was put in place, decades ago, that served the purpose at its time, but, it's time to move forward into the 21st century. And, I think the protections are, you do a good job, and you don't have to ever worry about that. And I think we all do that every day. So, for that reason, I think it's important for us to move forward, and I'm going to support the motion. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councilor Belanger?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Just a point regarding that, through you, Mr. Vice Mayor, to the manager now. In the city of Lowell, Mr. Manager, in the time of crisis, the fire chief is the #1 public safety official. Is that accurate?
No, that isn't accurate.
No?
We have tiers. Tier 1 is the city manager along with the police chief and the fire chief.
In time of crisis, okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Martin?
I move that we adopt the recommendation of the subcommittee and the vote to remove the fire chief provision from civil service.
Second.
Okay. I haven't been up here in a while, so.
Motion made and seconded.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call.
Council Belanger?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
Council Kennedy?
Yes.
Council Leahy?
No.
Council Martin?
Yes.
Council Mercia?
Yes.
Council Milonazo?
No.
Council Rourke?
No.
Council Samaras?
Yes.
6 yeas.
Motion passes. Mayor Elliott?
Thank you, Councilor. Moving on to the next item of the agenda, we have We have another vote. This is a vote to approve a pilot agreement on the Boot Hydro Incorporated. Motion to waive the full reading by Council Milonazo, seconded by Council Mercia. All those in favor, this is a very lengthy document. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion carries. Second reading by title, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, City of Lowell, and City Council is a vote approving the payment in lieu of taxes agreement with Boot Hydropower Incorporated regarding the property at 145 Pawtucket Street, 76.1 John Street, 23 Jackson Street in Lowell, Massachusetts, and authorizing the city manager to execute said agreement. I know that there was an Economic Development Subcommittee meeting on this tonight, so if no objection, the chair would like to recognize get the report that the meeting was held specifically on this issue, correct?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we did hold a Economic Development Subcommittee on the pilot agreement. It was attended by councilors, on top of the subcommittee, Councilor Samaras, Councilor Mercia, Councilor Milonazo, Councilor Leahy, City Manager Murphy, and Chief Assessor Sulamay. But it was more or less a briefing of the pilot agreement, Mr. Mayor, which we will, time was very short. We only had 30 minutes, so we really couldn't get into too much Q&A. But there were concerns, obviously, with losing tax revenue. The council is getting feedback, and we're going to lose anywhere from 600 to 1.7 million in tax revenue. We're going to find out through the manager's briefing very shortly that that's not the case. But there are other ways to make up for this revenue, and the manager will explain this whole agreement, how it's only a 5-year pilot. Some believe that it was going to be 20 years, so there's clarification that needs to be made here, and I think the city manager can do that better than I. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further discussion on that subcommittee report? See none, entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress and placed on file by Council Belanger, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion carries. Back to the original motion. Discussion on the motion, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to the City Council. As I said at the subcommittee, I'm fully supportive of this pilot agreement. I think the negotiations relative to the pilot agreement were very good, and I recommend adoption of it. Briefly, if I could explain what the pilot agreement calls for, is remember, this is part of a global complicated settlement relative to the Enel bridge matter. And everything is really contingent upon us getting a $13.4 million Tiger grant from the federal government. But even if we don't have that 3.54 Tiger grant, then we are going to have this pilot agreement with Enel. They originally wanted it for 20 years, but I said no, because if we don't get the Tiger agreement, I just want to have this for 5 years, and then we can renegotiate it after 5 years. But basically, what the terms are is that we are going to get 6.5% of the gross revenues of the hydro plant, or $500,000, whichever is greater. Now, the reason I think this is so good is because our experts tell us that with the new crest gate that is going to be constructed for the power plant, it's actually going to increase their revenue by 10%, is what the estimate is. So we're looking at the fact that we're going to be generating more than $500,000 in taxable dollars. We don't know what it is right now, but we believe it's going to be more than $500,000 because of the increase in their capacity, and we're getting 6.5% of that increase in the capacity. And remember, rates are going to be going up as the years go on. So there was some miscommunication that the difference in tax revenue was $1.7 million versus $500,000. First of all, as I've already told you, we think we're going to generate more than $500,000, but the tax bill for Enel right now is not $1.7 million, it's $1.2 million. So the tax difference is going to be between 1.2 and whatever we collect, but no less than $500,000. Now, I want to make it perfectly clear that there is going to be no negative tax impact on the residents of the city of Lowell, because the assessor has what's known as an overlay account. We grant abatements all the time. The appellate tax board grants abatements. So there has to be some account available to make up that money, that loss of money in tax revenue, so that the citizens don't have to pay that loss. So what we have is the overlay account. And for the next fiscal year, is that this overlay account will guarantee that there is no tax increase based upon this pilot program with Enel. And in the years ahead, we will find other revenues, just like we do every year. We lose buildings all the time to tax revenue. If UMass Lowell takes over a building, we lose that tax revenue, but we make it up. If a hospital builds a building, we don't get any tax revenue for that, but we make it up other ways. So we will find the revenue so that there is not a negative tax impact on the citizens. But I think you also must consider the fact that if we are able to get the Tiger Grant, then Enel will be precluded from going back before the appellate tax board to litigate their difference of opinion as to what their tax bill should be. And we have done an analysis, and if they prevail completely, and the appellate tax board agrees with their belief what their tax bill is going to be, we're going to owe Enel close to $8 million. That's $8 million the taxpayers are going to have to come up with. If if the appellate tax board just splits the difference and meets everybody halfway, which is a good chance, then we're going to owe Enel approximately $6 million, which the taxpayers, again, are going to have to come up with. I'm confident that we're going to get the Tiger Grant. I'm confident that this pilot agreement is going to become effective, not only for 5 years, but for 20 years, and that Enel will not be able to go back to the appellate tax board, and we're going to be able to save the residents $6 to $8 million in potential liability. So it is always a difficult choice. I applaud the city council, I really do. I've sat in your seat before. I know what a difficult situation this is, because there's a lot of unknown here. But there's been unknowns in other votes that you've taken in the past, and they've proven to be a great, great vote. And I think history is going to prove that this is going to be one of the better votes taken by the city council, and I applaud you for your courage and your wisdom to support this proposal that we have advanced. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Discussion, questions, concerns? Motion to approve? Oh, I'm sorry, there's a registered speaker. My apologies. Mr. Clark?
Linda Harvey.
I think she left.
She left?
She left.
Okay, Linda? You here, Linda?
She left.
She left?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, she spoke at the subcommittee hearing as well.
Okay, good.
Her questions were answered.
Okay. Okay, move to approve by Council Rourke, second by Council Samaras. Roll call.
Council Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
It's 9 yeas.
9 yeas, motion passes. Moving on to Section 7, ordinances from the city manager, 7.1. We have an ordinance to amend the zoning at 21 West Adams Street to extend the TMF zone. Motion to refer this to the planning board for report and recommendation and to a public hearing on July 28th by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Leahy. All those in favor?
I'd like to abstain from this vote.
Okay, I'm sorry. Motion by Councilor Leahy, second by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries. We'll send that to a public hearing on July 28th. Moving on to reports from the subcommittee. We did receive the report from the Economic Development Subcommittee. There was a second subcommittee meeting tonight, Subcommittee on Public Safety. I'd like to recognize the chair of that subcommittee, Chairman Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did have a public safety subcommittee meeting tonight. held here in council chambers. The whole entire council was there, along with Superintendent Taylor and Deputy Ryan. And I'd like to thank Councilor Mercia for subbing for the second half of the meeting. Tonight, the chief spoke about the current crime in the city. He is happy with that we are going in the right direction. The gang unit has made several high-profile arrests, and them, along with the men and women of the police department, are performing exceptional right now with regards to crime in the city. Chief also spoke about the recent opening of the Centerville substation that was done a couple of weeks ago. That once again was attended by all the council. It's going to be an advantage to have it there. It's more of it's also a neighborhood meeting place where people can just walk in at any point in time, use the facility, and talk and interact with the police department. The main reason for the meeting tonight, Mr. Mayor, was the See Something, Say Something campaign that the city has been pushing for some time now. Deputy Ryan did show a video presentation of the program that Mr. Manager, hopefully we can give that to LTC and they can play on their stations as well. It's a program that actually started in 2010. That was an anti-terrorism program that has since grown and has trickled down to communities such as Lowell. That includes not only police, but with inspections, quality of life issues. Two examples that were given as a result of the See Something, Say Something program was an arrest in Pawtuckaville, and also in the AOC garage, which led to the capture of a firearm and a quick arrest within 12 hours of the report. Multiple neighborhood leaders spoke about the program, how happy they are that the city is pushing it. They also, an idea was made of a tip, maybe once a week, a new tip can be given to the city, once again through newspaper, TV, the manager's office. So it was a good meeting, well attended, and we spoke on a couple of different issues. And once again, the main reason for having it was the promotion of the See Something, Say Something campaign. With that, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Council. Further questions on that report? Discussions? Seeing none, motion to approve by Council Martin, seconded by Council Belanger.
Mr. Mayor.
Council Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we get out of the subcommittee reports, I want to talk about a scheduled subcommittee that's going to, I'm sorry.
All those in favor of accepting that report and place on file signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Council Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we get out of this subcommittee discussion, I'd like to report a Parks and Recreation Subcommittee meeting before the very next City Council meeting on Tuesday, June 23rd at 5:30 will be the Parks and Recreation Subcommittee talking about the scoreboard for Colley Stadium. Councilor John Leahy and Councilor Danny Rourke are members of that subcommittee, so anyone interested, we already have it scheduled with the city clerk, 5:30, June 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Any other subcommittee reports or meetings scheduled? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next section of the agenda. Petitions. We have claims. We have 3 claims for property damage.
Mr. Mayor, if there's no objection, I'd just like to recommend that all petitions be referred to the Law Department and any other appropriate department for a report and recommendation.
Motion by Councilor Kennedy that all petitions be sent to request for report and recommendation. Seconded by Councilor Leahy. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. And the opposed, all of the petitions will be sent all together, and all petitions are adopted. Moving on to
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Martin.
Does the last one go to a public hearing? 9.5?
Oh, yeah, very good. So why don't we'll take 9, why don't I change that? 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, and 9.4. Councilor Kennedy?
Sure.
Motion that those 4 petitions be sent to the Law Department for a report and recommendation, and we'll take up 9.5 separately. Motion was made and seconded. Mr. Clerk, we got that correction? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. 9.5, we have a petition from National Grid requesting the installation of an electric conduit at 71 Wilder Street. Excuse me. Motion to refer this to a public hearing on June 23rd by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries. Public hearing is set on June 23rd at 7 p.m. Next section of the agenda, we have city council motions. First motion of the evening by Council Mercia. Request city manager have proper department post no parking on bridge signs on Roper Street Bridge. Second by Council Milonazo. Council Mercia?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion speaks for itself. This motion came about while I was undergoing physical therapy, and the lady asked me if I was a city councilor, and she said it's very important to her that people are parking on that very narrow bridge, and if a fire apparatus happened to be going by, they wouldn't be able to go over that area, little bridge. So, thank you. That speaks for itself.
Thank you, Councilor. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion carries. Second motion of the evening by Council Leahy. Request city manager work with proper departments and agencies to establish an historic trail throughout the downtown. Second by Council Martin. Council Leahy?
Thank you. Dick Howe Jr. was here this morning, and he talked about his summer walks in Lowell, and this motion came to me. A couple of people called a couple of weeks ago to refer this motion to me, and I thought it was a good idea, and the timing couldn't have been better with Dick Howe Jr. here today. So on this same idea, if we could establish with the manager and the help of the agencies and maybe the Parks Department and a historic walk through downtown, it could almost be like a mark, like the Freedom Trail in Boston, and it would highlight the history of Lowell, the monuments, famous people, famous visitors throughout the downtown, and I'm sure it would be it'd be something that would attract more people. They've already gotten a good response to the summer walks program, so this could be something obviously that would be year-round and help promote the downtown, help promote the city of Lowell. So I'll leave it in your hands. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council, further discussion on this motion? Councilor Belanger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief, but I think it's a fantastic motion. Boston's North End has the Freedom Trail, if you will, that takes it through the North End and all historic points and whatnot. That's very well treated. Sees millions of people. I know it's Boston at the same time, but it's an attraction, and that's what this would achieve. And just to make a point that downtown Lowell already has a cultural district, which many cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth have spoke very highly of, and it turns out Lowell does have one, but does not want the proper signage to indicate to people that they're in this culture district. We have brochures in the manager's office and at destinations throughout the city that Lowell, but to go through all that effort and put together a beautiful brochure about a cultural district and not put signs that to let people know they're in it, I have a lot of difficulty understanding that logic, to be honest. But this would achieve that, so I think it's a good motion. I support it very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Further discussion on this motion?
I thought we had signs.
Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Moving on to the third motion by Council Leahy. Request city manager report on progress of getting crosswalks painted throughout the city.
Second.
Second by Councilor Kennedy. Council Leahy?
Motion basically speaks for itself, but if we could get an update, I should have put on this too, line painting. I know that you're working on that. It seems like we're falling behind maybe on our line painting on the roads. And it'd be good to get as many crosswalks as we could done for Folk Festival. But anything that we could do to get the crosswalks and the lines to be painted in the city and get that back on track would be appreciated. Speaking with the lines of the roads, the 3 new roads that we just did, Market Street, Barnum, and Industrial Ave, those should be scheduled to have line painting pretty soon.
Mr. Manager? Or Mr.
Yeah, it
McGovern?
takes a few weeks, but I'm sure it's scheduled, right?
Mr. McGovern explains that it takes a few weeks for the oil to come to the surface of the road,
Yeah.
but as soon as that happens, they will paint the lines.
Okay, and if I could just indulge you, one more thing with the painting and the street lines and stuff. Could I just ask that, a few weeks ago, we had talked about the cleanup on the roads after they're paved, and this is more my pet peeve, but I know it kind of, we talked about it as a council. The roads really aren't being cleaned up as they pave them, and I thought that was gonna be the new procedure, so if we could get an answer on that. There's really no reason to have piles of debris on lawns and public sidewalks after they finish these roads, and it was my understanding that'd be a few days and they'd be cleaned up, and but it's been more than a week now, so if we could just check into that and find out why we're not holding the, should be the company that paves the road, right? Hold them accountable to clean it, so, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor? Further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next motion reading by Council Samaras. Request city manager have traffic engineer study traffic patterns at the intersection of Nesmith Street and Andover Street. Second by Council Rourke. Council Samaras?
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. Anybody who's, if you've held a sign, a political sign at the corner of 133 and 38, you can know how sometimes dangerous that area can be. But there are two things that have come to note. When you're coming up from the hospital up 38, going to 133, and you come to the intersection, there's a left-hand arrow and a lane for going straight. The lane for taking a left, the arrow on the road is no longer really there, but there is a sign saying only left turns. But if you stand in that area for any amount of time, you'll see many cars coming up and going straight ahead from both lanes, causing some problem, some consternation for people coming down Nesmith Street. The main issue when I made this motion was when you're coming down Nesmith Street, Route 38 to 133, there's a delayed green light, so the people coming up from the hospital can make the left turn first. But there's only a green arrow, and there is no left lane arrow. And many people have talked to me about this, where they feel that they're taking their life in their own hands, trying to make the left turn from Nesmith Street onto Andover Street going towards the city. Because what's happened, when the cars are coming up from Nesmith Street from the hospital, the lane turning left literally covers the lane going straight, and you really have to crawl your way up into the intersection to make a move, and sometimes you make that move and a car's coming down very fast. They're just not driving properly. So if the traffic engineer can look at that area, I know it's a state road also, but something has to be done for that area. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next motion of the evening by Council Kennedy. Request city manager consolidate each of the collective bargaining agreements into one document as part of the current contract negotiations of each bargaining unit. Second by Council Belanger. Council Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, this is something that came up at one of the subcommittee meetings, and I've had private discussions with the city auditor and with the city manager about this, but I guess what's happened over time, over decades in some instances, is that a lot of the collective bargaining agreements have been, rather than to be consolidated into one document, they exist in a large and thick file that includes amendments after amendment after amendment. And I think that given that all of the contracts expire, I think, on June 30th, and they're all going to have to be renegotiated, that this might be an opportunity to correct that situation and make sure that each and every one of the collective bargaining agreements is a consolidated document that everybody can easily understand. And I think this is probably good for people in the administration, but I think it's also good for members of that collective bargaining group so that they can understand what's in their contract and what isn't in their contract. And I think beyond that, the only thing that I would add is I think that there have been some instances recently where we have grievances and so forth over money issues, and really it's just a matter of nobody having an understanding of what's in their collective bargaining agreement. And I think to ask them or to expect them to have a understanding of what is in the collective bargaining agreement is asking a little bit too much if the agreement does not exist in one consolidated document. I think the manager is expecting to do this, at least in conversations that I've had with the manager. I think he's interested in doing the same thing. But I guess I thought that it was worth putting the motion on because I think that maybe in negotiating with those contracts, it would probably be good if the manager was able to say to each collective bargaining group that the city council is insisting that these contracts be put into a consolidated form.
Thank you, Council. Further discussion on this? Council Rourke?
I guess just a question, maybe to the manager or to the city attorney. How is this beneficial to, I guess, to anybody? It's not, maybe I just don't understand the nature of the motion, but how, I mean, it seems like every collective bargaining agreement is separate and distinct. How would that be putting into one document? Would that be beneficial for anybody?
Mr. Mayor?
Council Kennedy.
I'm not suggesting that there be one agreement that would be all-inclusive for each bargaining group, but I think that if you look at some of the collective bargaining agreements, instead of there being a document like you may have in your collective bargaining group, that instead of that, what there is a file, and so when a new contract is negotiated, there's just amendments put in. And they're never consolidated into one document. So that in order to find out what's in the contract and what isn't, you have to refer to the original document, but then you have to go through each of the amendments. And I think that as time has gone on, each time that the contracts have expired and there had to be a new one negotiated, that rather than to be consolidated in, that was put in as another amendment, so that in some instances you may have collective bargaining agreements that might have a dozen amendments. So if you were to find out, if you wanted to find out, for instance, whether or not you could collect overtime pay during a week that you took a personal day, the only way for you to do that if you're an employee is to go through each and every one of those amendments, which are probably not available to you in the first place. And that's it in kind of a nutshell, I think.
Council Rourke?
Okay.
All set. Further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Last motion of the evening, Council Belanger, request city manager update on previous motion regarding the land swap with the National Park and the LRTA. Bus parking, second by Councilman Malinazzo. Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, the whole Hamilton Canal District, for the time being, is in the city of Lowell's hands. And, there are a few obstructions that are in our way for the time being that are impeding progress at the Hamilton Canal District. Now, the single most important document derailing progress is this bus parking, this LRTA agreement with the bus parking, okay? It seems like it's been endless. The LRT, we've also had a few other issues that have come up over I look at them as a city partner, no two ways about it. But we've had issues with ridership with UMass Lowell students. We've had issues with reliability regarding bus scheduling. Maybe weather attributed to that somewhat over the winter, I don't know. But, and most important, is the bus parking for this land transfer, and this is the barrier that's in the way. I don't know I did have a discussion with Phil Shea, Mr. Manager. He is your representative to the LRTA. We had a lengthy meeting last week. He was hoping to get some progress in last month's May meeting, but in turn, that was canceled for, I don't know, he doesn't know why. And they only meet 8 times per year. They take July and August off, okay? They do have a June meeting, the end of June, okay? You know, we need an update to what is going on with this arrangement, okay? Without this agreement, we can't get the land swap deal. That is stalled. There's a ripple effect that this is in the way. So, Mr. Manager, this seems to be going nowhere. I don't know. I'm hoping you have some good news. But, and second leg to my motion is that with the building of the garage, the infrastructure that's, you know, required, if you will, to attract the development and that we need to jumpstart. We need just a few feet of federal property, from what I understand. So at what point do we abandon that and just work within what is ours, Mr. Manager? Do we have a plan B at the same time? So I guess this is a two-part question. We're getting nowhere with the LRTA. I know I'm frustrated. Where is that? And at what point is the plan B kick in, where we completely abandon the land swap deal and build on what we can? So, Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager.
Mr. Manager?
You're 100% correct, Council. It's been very frustrating dealing with in negotiating with the LRTA. We're at a point now where there's just one alternative that they will agree to. The National Park Service is reviewing it, but we have decided that we're going to take a position that a decision is made immediately. Otherwise, we're going to go to Plan B, which is to reconfigure the garage so the land swap isn't necessary. The best, but I'm just going to do, if we do that, then we're going to have to park the buses in the garage, and that means it's going to take up a number of spaces, and it's going to be lost revenue for the city. So that's not a very good option, but it may be the only option we have. But we are still working with the LRTA, but quite honestly, if we don't have a determination very shortly, then we'll go to Plan B.
Yes, because again, I don't mean to be repetitive, Mr. Manager, because after June, we don't meet again until September. We can't. We've lost enough time over there. You know, we got to stress that, you know, to the LI, we really, really need their assistance on this one. You know, I know we look at them as a partner of the city, and they are, but I'm not seeing that partnership. So I don't know. I have faith in you to get it done. You know, if I need to come in with a motion, we're in summer session now. If I need to come in with a motion every 2 weeks, then I'm prepared to do it. But something needs to give up there. And because this, again, I can't stress enough how important this agreement is with this bus parking. We need to get past this barrier to move on to the next stage. So I look forward to your response, Mr. Manager, and we meet again in a couple weeks, and hopefully you'll have some encouraging response. Thank you very much.
Further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, that motion carries. That concludes the business before the council this evening. Entertain a motion to adjourn by Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, that motion carries. This meeting stands adjourned.